The Starks have manned the wall for thousands of years. And you are a Stark. You might not have my name. You have my blood.
These are Ned Stark's parting words to Jon as he departs for the wall. They are tender and loving, but they are carefully chosen. Ned isn't lying, but he is obscuring the truth that could bring down his house and the entire kingdom. For fans of the books, the phrase is also eerily familiar, echoing a short exchange that defines Ned and Catelyn's entire marriage. It happens in a bedroom in Winterfell early in A Game of Thrones. Ned tells Catelyn, "Never ask me about Jon. He is my blood, and that is all you need to know." He says it once, and Catelyn never asks again, not because she has been put in her place, because she understands him. You see, most people look at Catelyn Stark and see a jealous wife, a noblewoman who couldn't get past her husband's one supposed indiscretion, cold to a boy who never asked to be born, the mother who turned away from a dying child because of who his father had loved before her. Some call her petty. Some see her one of the most unlikable characters in the entire saga, a woman whose treatment of Jon is unforgivable. But all of these people are missing the point. What if jealousy was never what was driving her? What if Catelyn Stark wasn't punishing Jon for being her husband's bastard? Catelyn knew more about Jon, and what she knew will change the way you look at the entire story. Let me explain further. To understand what Catelyn knew, you have to understand who she was talking to. Ned Stark is remembered as the honourable fool, the man whose rigid morality got him killed in King's Landing. That reading is wrong, and the proof is in something that everyone saw, but somehow forgot. When Robert Baratheon lay dying, Ned took down his last command. Robert dictated that his crown should pass to his son Joffrey. Ned wrote it down differently. He wrote, "To my heir." To Cersei Lannister, that change meant nothing. She read it and saw what she expected to see. But Ned had built a hidden message into the document, because he knew by then that Joffrey was not Robert's blood. The rightful heir was Stannis. Ned had written a will that told the Lannisters what they wanted to see, while silently supporting Stannis' claim to the throne. One phrase, two messages. This is a man Catelyn knew better than anyone. She'd been married to Ned for 15 years. She knew his mind, and she knew how carefully he chose his words, how he could wrap the truth inside a riddle to protect it from those that would use it to do harm. And early in A Game of Thrones, she presses him about Jon, about who his mother was, where she came from, why this boy is here. Ned shuts her down with a single line. He does not say, "He is my son." He says, "He is my blood, and that is all you need to know." And Catelyn, who knew exactly what her husband sounded like when he was telling a carefully chosen version of the truth, trusted him enough to never ask again. That is the lens for everything that follows. A married couple, one of them carrying the secret, the other one knowing it was there and helping keep it under wraps. Most people heard "my blood" and assumed it was Ned being short with his wife. But really, Ned was giving Catelyn the most honest answer he could give, while telling her nothing she could be made to repeat under torture, under questioning, or under suspicion. Ned could have said, "my son." He chose not to. He chose a word that was technically true, and that gave him a defensible answer if Robert ever asked. Jon is my blood. Not a lie. Lyanna's son is Stark blood after all. But not the lie everyone thought he was telling either. The fact he repeats the phrase almost to the letter as Jon sets off for the wall tells us he had a specific, carefully rehearsed answer for this question, and he reached for it every time. And Catelyn, sitting in that bedroom, looking at the man she'd grown to love over 15 years, understood immediately, because she did the same thing. Alone with her thoughts, Catelyn lets herself consider Jon's parentage for a moment. She thinks to herself in the novels, whoever Jon's mother had been, Ned must have loved her fiercely. It reads like grief. It reads like wounded pride. But pay attention to the words she chose, with no audience but herself. She does not say, his lover or his woman. She says, whoever his mother had been. The neutral phrasing of a woman who has not allowed herself to name a possibility. The love she is talking about is fierce, and the kind a man carries home from a war, the kind that survives death, the kind a man builds a life around a secret to protect. That is not how you describe a fling or an affair. That is how you describe something far deeper. Considering her skill and precision with words, the ambiguity was not accidental. Take the Crossroads Inn in Season 1, Episode 5, when Catelyn encountered Tyrion. What most people saw was a noblewoman losing her temper. What actually happened was a woman conducting a calculated political ambush in real time. When she recognized Tyrion Lannister, she did not call her guards. She stood up in a public room, named the houses of the bannermen present one by one, and invoked the bonds of guest right and the oaths of fealty owed to her father at River Run. She gave each lord a way to refuse without losing honor, and a stronger way to comply. She put Tyrion in her custody in front of witnesses, with legal language that would later be defensible at trial. That is not a woman who is careless with her words, but instead one who has been trained, since childhood, to use precise language. She shared this precision with her husband, and when Ned answered her question about Jon by professing that "he is my blood," she could read between the lines. She heard the load it was carrying. So she stopped asking, and she started acting as his accomplice. In A Storm of Swords, Catelyn opposes Robb's plan to legitimize Jon, citing the Blackfyre Rebellion as a cautionary tale. Most people see this and mistake it for an old grudge. What is actually happening is Catelyn naming, out loud, the exact historical precedent to explain why Jon's existence had terrified her for 15 years. By this point, Robb is wounded, his cause crumbling. Sansa is held captive, and Bran and Rickon are believed dead. Naming Jon heir to Winterfell is, on the surface, a sensible succession plan. Jon is a Stark. The North will accept him. Robb has nobody else. Catelyn refuses, and the precedent she reaches for, in front of her son in his command tent, is the Blackfyre Rebellion. But let's run through what this actually means. Daemon Blackfyre was Aegon the Unworthy's legitimized bastard son, a man whose claim to the Iron Throne plunged Westeros into 5 bloody wars across 5 generations. The Blackfyre Rebellion's huge violence and brought about thousands of unnecessary deaths. It nearly ended the Targaryen dynasty. Catelyn could have invoked any number of cautionary tales. She could have appealed to Sansa's claim, to the rights of true-born daughters, to the precedent of any northern lord. She did not. She reached, specifically and precisely, for the one historical example where a legitimized bastard ended up threatening the realm. That is a very deliberate choice, and a chilling one. Because the only way Jon could trigger another Blackfyre Rebellion is if he had a blood claim somewhere stronger than anyone in that tent had been told. Catelyn was not opposing Jon out of jealousy. She'd spent 15 years living with the suspicion that he was a Blackfyre-shaped problem hiding inside her own family. The moment her son tried to formalize that problem into northern law, she named it for what it was. And her coldness, all those years, was the same instinct in quieter form. She could not tell Ned what she suspected. If she was wrong, she would have wounded her husband for nothing. And if she was right, she would have put herself and her family in danger. She could not tell Robb, because Robb was a child. She could not tell anyone. So she did the only thing she could do, and kept Jon at the edge of her family. She made sure that if the truth ever came out, if a Targaryen loyalist ever came to Winterfell, if a maester ever pieced it together, if a queen ever started asking questions, there would be no version of events in which Jon Snow had been raised as a son of Catelyn Stark. Her coldness was a firewall, but she paid for it. There is a moment deep in the early books where her composure slips and we get a glimpse beneath the facade. Her son Bran is broken. Her family is falling apart. She is alone with her grief, and she allows herself to think about Jon Snow, the boy she sent away, the boy she would not love, the boy she made certain knew, every day of his life, that he did not belong at her table. She does not feel vindicated. She does not feel relieved that the bastard is finally at the wall. She feels something else. She feels that she was wrong. Not about what Jon was. She never quite gets there, but she gets to the edge and pulls back. But she feels that, in spite of whatever Jon may have represented, he was still just a child, and whatever the secret had been worth, the price of it had been a small boy growing up with the woman of the house, unable to look him in the eye. That is not what jealousy feels like. Jealousy does not make you sit by a fire 15 years later and wish you had been kinder. Grief does that. Fear does that. Knowing that you mistreated a child because you were terrified of who he might be, simply for existing, does that. Ned thought he carried his promise to Lyanna alone, but his wife carried it too. Catelyn could feel it, but she never dared to name it. She knew better than that. She knew what it would cost them if it ever slipped, so she covered for her husband. This is devotion, not jealousy. The bedroom conversation where Catelyn presses Ned isn't a wife being silenced. The sickbed scene where she will not look at Jon isn't a mother resenting a stepson. The command tent where she pulls the Blackfyre Rebellion out of 2 centuries of Westerosi history as her counter-argument. These all show a woman holding the line for the safety of her family and the realm. Catelyn Stark did not know about Rhaegar. She did not know about the Tower of Joy. She did not know about Aegon Targaryen, 6th of his name. But she knew her husband, and her husband told her, with carefully chosen words, exactly as much as was safe to be heard. She heard Ned, and kept his secret, and the cost of keeping it was paid by both of them, and by a boy at the wall who never truly understood why his father's wife had hated him. So the next time someone tells you Catelyn Stark was the jealous wife who couldn't get past her husband's bastard, you'll know better. Drop a comment with what you think Catelyn knew. Was it that Jon wasn't Ned's son? Was it that Jon was Lyanna's? Or did you suspect something even closer to the truth and decide, alone in that bedroom, never to ask the question that would confirm it? If you want more like this, subscribe and stay with us. There are more threads like this running through every single episode.